We have returned, and I have one thing and only one thing that I want to see throughout this episode, which I'm assuming we'll get as soon as it starts. And I want to see my boy fight. I just want to see what goes down. You know, I want to know what to be expecting almost in these fights with him piloting whatever this is that he is, right? And going against this angel. And I just want to see how all that stuff starts shaping out, and then I can get a better idea of what to almost expect, I think, with some things going forward. And then I'm assuming we can go into the second half of the episode a little bit, and we can progress some things a little bit more, expand the world, explain how things kind of ended up the way they are, or why they are, in the positions that a lot of the people are in, and we kind of like slightly hinted towards or introduced in a way throughout the first episode, could start getting maybe explored a little bit. That's more so what I'm hoping for, and we'll see if they actually kind of follow and do that. We went through a wild journey, I'd say, with Shinji for his first episode, or our first episode, I guess, and he basically got manipulated for the entire episode, and then by the back end, everybody's like screaming at him and telling him that he's going to do this stuff and basically play his role, and it starts kind of putting him in these situations where it starts making him feel bad, like he's the one who's doing the bad things, when in reality he's really not, like it isn't his fault. And it's just, I don't know, it's fun. We can play into multiple perspectives in a way of viewing, of course, how he would end up taking the situations and viewing them and acting in those scenarios, versus how exactly, I guess, somebody from like a viewer's perspective or somebody from like a broader picture. I'm assuming what his dad is kind of isolating himself from the actual relation and connection that he has, that's his son, to a more so like world scale, like large picture here, and kind of looking at everything and deciding like, this is what's best for the people, for the human race. This is what we need to do to kind of keep things going along and to stop all the evils and all this stuff. While in reality, you're likely probably going to be turning your son evil as a result, I'd assume, right? I mean, and maybe not, but you're also part of the evil by the things that you're doing to your son. So it's like, we'll see what you do. But it's like, I feel a little bad for the kid. So hopefully, maybe he can have a little bit of happiness at some point throughout this episode or at some other time, and we can not let him just feel like he's being used completely. And I don't even know if he's in the mental state where he can process that that's happening, because he does seem so young. So we'll end up having to see. Everything went over well last time with copyright and a whole bunch of other things, so I'm assuming we're good. So I'm just going to keep doing the same format and everything that I kind of presented it in the first one, and then we're gonna keep going from there, I guess. So hopefully you guys enjoy. If you like it all, like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Feel free to stick around for our discussion. Leave any comments about this episode or series. Let's get going though with episode 2. Log brother. Oh no. Copy your movements. Go. Okay. Nice. One small step. The most movement they've ever seen out of that thing. Oh, no balance. Well, you know. You don't want to die, do you now? Oh my god, just pick it up with a hand? It doesn't look like it's what the Oh. I wonder if he's feeling it. Like if they're like that far in sync that he's feeling the pain. Okay. How do you dodge? You just I don't know why I just like expected it to be, alright, he's gonna get in this thing and immediately just take it down, no issue. I guess he'll likely still do it, but we have to build to it, huh? What the fuck? I love the let me sit up, look around, and then just lay back down and be like, man, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. That was such a cool cutaway though. Like so cool. So what happened?
幸いとも言える。我々の先行投資が無駄にならなかった。
てもらわんと困るよ。
These guys have like pure evil written all over them. Just look at them. Look at their noses, you know? I've ever seen a man with a pointed nose. I know what that means.
またも事実は闇の中ね。
広報部は喜んでたわよ。やっと仕事ができたって。
うちもお気楽なもんね。
どうかしら。本当はみんな怖いんじゃ。
I mean, their damn lives are on the line. Of course they're gonna be scared.
ネルフといえばもう少しうまく使えんのかね。
0号機に引き続き君らが初陣で壊した初号機の修理代、国が一つ傾くよ。
聞けばあのおもちゃは君の息子に与えたそうではない。君の仕事はこれだけではあるまい。
Just sitting and soaking all of that in, huh?
これこそが君の急務。
教科における唯一の希望なのだ。我々のね。
Can you explain what the project is so I'm aware, or are we just gonna keep vaguely speaking on it and leaving me concerned?
いかに後戻りはできん。
I also like how they're so like worried about money in the budget and everything when like everybody's gonna be like dying and not in a good state. Right, they have no time, so like why are we concerned about that? We should be solely focusing on how we can use as much as we can to get us back and protect us and save us. I love the coloring they're using while he's here. Yo. So this is where all the pilots go. All their test subjects.
やっぱクーラーは人類の至宝。まさに科学の勝利ね。
シンジ君が気づいたそうよ。
で、
Look at all these damn giant mechs and everything, and instead you're like, yeah, you see, that's the shit. Still your arm, huh? So I'm assuming by the memory thing, it's just the things that he kind of took on while he was within it, that he was perceiving to be there and actually occurring and happening and stuff, which likely probably weren't.
エバーとこの町が完全に稼働すればいけるかもしれない。
使徒に勝つつもり？相変わらず楽天的ね。
あら、希望的観測は人が生きていく。
I'm not personally gonna do anything, but I'll be optimistic.
あなたのそういうところ助かるわ。
じゃ。
Goodbye. Yo, you awake? Hey, be careful, dude. Remember the last time you went somewhere with her? Uh-oh. Can't even look at him. Averts his eyes. Don't get on, just let him go. Alright.
むしろ一緒にいる方が不自然。
Absolutely.
一人でですか？
そうだ。彼の個室はこの先の第6ブロックになる。問題はなかろう。
はい。
No complaints from him.
シンジ君。
I mean, do you want to stay with him? Like, what? What are we proposing here? He clearly does not want to be with his father.
だから、シンジ君は。
Oh, you're gonna take him in.
引き取ることにしたから。
Nice.
上の許可も取ったし。心配しなくても子供に手出したりしないわよ。
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that.
相変わらずジョークの通じないやつ。さて、今夜は
You're welcome home party.
もちろん、新たなる同居人の歓迎会。
Yeah. Damn, bro, he's really gonna be able to live the life, you know? What's a few, you know, mental issues going on, you know, and some trauma? You get to live with someone like her, right? Just take it as it is.
子供と私だけでも疎開しろって。
疎開ね。いくら要塞都市だからって言ったって何一つアテンできませんもんね。
昨日の事件思い出し。
And then he hears all the noise around him, the thing that he probably could have prevented and he wasn't able to. All the people who are like losing their normal lives and their way of living as a result. Ugh. Oh, that is pretty nice.
なんだか
Yep.
寂しい街ですね。
I love when there's like underground things that like come out and they do shit like this. And these buildings? What the hell? Although they were just gonna like send an object out the ground, not a whole city. That is really cool. Okay. I thought it was cool
首都迎撃
before.
専用要塞都市第三新東京市
New Tokyo 3.
私たちの街よ
Alright.
そしてあなたが守った街
So be proud of the things you've done, but at the exact same time, you gotta be careful because the things that you'll grow to like and love, you must protect.
私も先日この町に引っ越してきたばっかりでねさあ入って
You got all those boxes.
お邪魔します。
シンジ君ここはあなたの家なのよ
Will you enter into someone else's space? You cross the barrier, cross the line.
ただいま。
お
Mm.
かえりなさい
It's like the mother you never had.
散らかってるけど気にしないでね
My god.
これがちょっ
Listen, she's never home. My god.
入れといて
とは
Yeah,
い。
she's a real mess. Holy shit.
つまみ。
She's living the dream.
おかしい。どんな生活してんだろう。
Well, at least you can walk in it, you know? I've seen way worse before.
ああそっちはいいのまだ寝てると思うから
He?
寝てる？
There's a... Do you have a pet?
やっぱ
I love it.
この時のために生きてるようなもんよね
Voice actor's doing great.
こういう食事に慣れてないんで。
Eating with somebody else, having a
嫌い
family.
じゃ
いや、違うんです。
楽しいでしょこうして
What an angle.
食事すんの
Mm-hmm. Another one.
はい。
So we continue our way of openly displaying her like that as we did throughout the first one. I'm more so curious if it's just going to be like a just a her type of thing, or if they're going to do it for all the female characters.
ここはあなたの家なんだから
A place to call
遠慮
home.
なんていらないのよ
Be careful with those
もう
statements.
はいはいはいはいって新規臭いわねお男の子でしょシャキッとはいシャキッとと洗い流しちゃいなさい
She's so expressive. What?
ミサトさん。
何
Cover yourself, brother. That's the boy. Why does she have a fucking penguin?
温泉ペンギン
It's
よ
one of those new hot. Yeah, sick hair, dude. Cover yourself, brother.
名前はペンペンもう一人の同居人
Okay, well, that makes sense for the fridge.
前
I love how there's something else there. The two things.
ちとをわざとらしくはしゃぎすぎたかしら見透かされてるのはこっちかもね
Yeah.
風呂って嫌なこと思い出す方が多いよな。
Mm.
父さんと綾波レイか。
You're alone with nothing but that stuff kind of surrounding you. Your own thoughts in your own head. It's like when you're trying to sleep.
あと20日もすれば動ける。それまでは凍結中の0号機の再起動を取り付ける予定だ。
辛いでしょうねあの子たち
エヴァを動かせる人間は他に
Must be hard. Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
そうしてもらう。
Do you play this to not have to hear all the thoughts in your own head in a way? Distract you?
彼のメンテナンスもあなたの仕事でしょ怖いのよどう触れたらいいかわからなくってもう泣き言自分から引き取るって大見え切ったんじゃないあの時私はシンジ君を自分の道具として見ていた
Mm-hmm.
律子と同じかあの人を倒したというのに嬉しくないのね
How are you able to?
ここも知らない天井。
So much new stuff, brother.
当たり前か。この町で知ってることなんてどこにもないもん。なんでここにいるんだろう。
So they can keep tabs on you, use you, force you into things you clearly don't want to do. I love it. It's like bang, 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 like over and over. Oh, it's from this, but in a way it could be like the things coming back, yeah. I love going back and they're showing us what occurred.
初号機完全に沈黙。
ミサト、ここまでね。作戦中止、パイロット保護を最優先。プランを強制射出して。ダメです。完全に制御不能です。
Damn.
なんですって。
He's got those, so he basically has to get himself like knocked out, and he enters the he's in the dark place now.
エヴァ、再起動。
Yeah,
動けるはずありません。まさか。
the unconscious state that's just goes on a rampage. Uh-oh. That's pretty sick though. And now it just operates normal. Yeah, everything's fine. Crazy. Ah.
勝ったな。
And the speed and everything he moves at. You saw how small the step was that he could take.
ダメだわ。AT フィールドがある限り、使徒には接触できない。
Yeah, about that. He's about to show you some shit you ain't never seen.
3復元。
すごい。
You just rip through it?
もう AT フィールドを展開。
Kind of beast are you? Same thing with your arm that you did, yeah. Send you back, same way. I love how the building just slides. Until you are no more. Oh my god. It consumes. Oh. The armor didn't withstand that, right? I mean, I know it got broken in pieces, but... It did? Then all of a sudden, I'm assuming he snaps back and he just loses himself. Now he's like, where am I? What just happened? Buddy, you're in for a long one. I gotta be honest. And I love how when he's alone like this too, he just like sits there disturbed, but he doesn't like scream out or cry for help or anything.
あなたは人に褒められる立派なことをしたのよ。胸を張っていいわ。おやすみ、シンジ君。頑張ってね。
Ugh. I gotta say, I think my favorite thing is the way that we decided to direct this episode with how we decided to sequence everything. From starting you off with a much anticipated fight, at least for me, and something that I really wanted to see and how all of this kind of unfolded, to immediately hitting you with one of the nastiest cuts I've ever seen in my life. To literally just pulling you out of the scenario and making you question a whole bunch of things, right? Because my mind immediately went to when we end up seeing Shinji just laying in this empty white room, right? Like, and I was immediately thinking, okay, there could be a variety of things, but first it was like, did this actually happen at all? Is he just having like random nightmares and things? Like, is it just like some sort of dream state that he's in? Was he just completely unconscious? And this is like him kind of envisioning like one of those areas, you know, like sometimes when like a character will get knocked out or like something will happen and then it's almost like somebody important to them in some sort of way, or somebody within their life kind of comes to them and talks to them and like encourages them almost that they have to get up or that they have to do something and they have to like reach some sort of state and that they can't let others down and they can't do these things, like, you know, like the typical shonen thing that happens a lot of the time. I was almost expecting like maybe something like that. We could be like in a state like that, but for whatever reason this was the chosen location for it to be. be. I mean, and it could have just been other things that it was, right? It could have just been the aftermath. Okay, the fight ended up ending, and then this is where he ended up being, which is exactly what it was, but it doesn't frame it in the way that you actually know of like what happened, because the last time we see him is basically him getting shit kicked, and so like he probably lost, right? And that's what the impression that you're almost led to be under for the entire time. So somebody like him who's not overly happy or enthused throughout the rest of the episode and stuff leads you almost believing like what happened, like, and also leaves you questioning like what happened in this situation that they were able to defeat this thing, because they talked about how this was their only option and this is all that they have left and that's all that they can do. But if he, from what we could actually see beforehand, they ended up losing, what happened? Like, how did we get rid of it? Did it just run away and like leave us alone, or like, you know, like, and it leaves lots of questions and it leaves you kind of wondering the situation. So it was absolutely fantastic how they did that, and then they could build up and they could drop a lot of things that are to come, and you can kind of get a bit of a perspective into the way that like almost he would think and the things that are happening around them and the way that people are kind of reacting to the situation before we ultimately have to put them in a situation where we try and almost have all of these nightmares and this trauma and these things kind of resurface for him and put him in a state where he is reflecting on these things and it's almost keeping him awake and there's nothing that he can kind of do, and these are the things that are haunting him, right? And I think it was just excellently sequenced, and to a point that I absolutely love that, and it made me not mad at all, like after getting the full payoff and everything, that we did cut away in those moments. And I honestly had no issue if they even didn't go back entirely, but I think the way that they were able to kind of mix it to almost showcase like the situation that happened mixed in with the thoughts that Shinji's probably having and the mental state that he's probably in a lot of these moments, all adding up together made it for a better sequence entirely than I was expecting going into the episode. So I am very, very much pleased with what ended up occurring here. So I'm very happy. It's clear, and I think this episode makes it well more clear than it was in the previous one, where I was under the impression that we can play around psychologically a lot with Shinji, but also a lot of the other characters and perspectives and a bunch of things like that. But it was all things that were almost like hinted at in a way, right? It was showcased in ways that you can take it that way, but it doesn't mean that we have to take the story that way. This episode almost confirms, no, we're taking the story that way. It's not all about we got to save the world and we got to show all these, you know, fights with all our mechs and everything else that we have, right? Like, it's no, there's some deep shit that can kind of go on, and the reasons why a lot of the characters are acting out and behaving in the ways that they are and are viewing and seeing these things from the direction that they are, and the type of like narrow view that some of them might have and the broad picture that the others might have, and how difficult it might be for certain people to be in these certain situations, and why Shinji's going to act out the way that he is, on top of the fact, because of how young that he actually is, of course he's going to take this a lot harder, I'm assuming, than somebody who's kind of fully developed and can realize that from broader pictures. It's really interesting how we can showcase a lot of the other characters kind of using him as well, and then we can break up at multiple moments too and put in a lot of like slowed down pacing, like kind of comedic moments almost, like in things that can allow him to like enjoy or experience things that he hasn't before, and put him in this situation where it's like almost he's living an entirely different and new life and seeing the positives and the good things that can come out of just being alive, right? And almost trying to put him in a mental state of like, these are the good like things and these are the things that I want and the things that I like should feel. And it leads me to believe that like Misato's almost strictly being used here as somebody whose job is to keep Shinji like mentally upbeat, right? To keep him in a spot where he's like mentally clear, or even not clear, but just at a point that he can like actually function and be used by everybody else, a part of the nerve organization, right? So I think that's not a great thing. And she's somebody I am struggling entirely to get a read on, and I've talked about that last episode a lot too, where we do a lot of different stuff with her, where it's like she almost seems like she has genuine concern at a lot of moments, but then almost reverts at other moments and completely goes to just being like, yeah, you need to do this or you should do that. And then she throws out a lot of things at him like, oh, you're a boy. And then even this episode, she made the comment about like, you should be acting like a man and doing all this again. And it's just like, there are things that are almost like getting into his head and trying to manipulate him, it kind of feels like, and pushing him to a point that like he needs to be acting or behaving in these certain ways because this person who is like her can actually like see those things or call you out on that shit, and you have to kind of put yourself together a little bit more. And then we have like plenty of other moments with her too, where you can't just, I can't get agreed on, is she just doing her job, or is she actually doing these things because that's who she is and that's how she feels and that's how she's trying to operate? You know, she actually cares for him, or is she showing a genuine care for him at these moments, or is she literally just obeying orders and the things that she's been told to? And is she somebody to almost be suspicious of for those reasons, for the things that she's kind of like, the situations and everything that she's putting him in, being so welcoming and so kind in certain moments, right? It just because it's such a contrast compared to everybody else, and you want to sit around and be like, I trust this person, I can believe them. But when you're dealing with a situation that I'm feeling like we're developing towards, it makes me really cautious of her and what her actual feelings and motivations and stuff are. And even maybe they are, maybe she is a very genuine person, maybe she means all these things that she's saying, but at the same time she does know deep down that it is her job and she kind of has to obey and do the things that she's instructed almost to do. So she has to lay down like hints of like these things to him, to be able to kind of, I guess, manipulate him a little bit. I don't know. It leaves me conflicted because like I absolutely love her. I love her design. I love like her personality. Like everything about her is just fantastic. But like there's so much that just like concerns me. It's like I don't know how to feel about this, and it gets me a little worried. I think the rest of the episode will be a lot easier if I can just skip through here. So we essentially start off, and this fighting begins. We end up seeing like a very tiny step that he's basically able to take, but it's huge for all of them. They've never been able to see this thing operated or moved or anything. So it's a huge moment, right? And it's a huge accomplishment for us to be able to see, which is an entire contrast to like the thing that we get to see at the end of the episode, when it's kind of almost acting on its own, and it's moving full speed, no issue, taking these steps and full maneuvering, no problems. It's kind of crazy how all of that ends up working, and how like sluggish and kind of mechanical it almost feels like when Shinji's actually the one sitting down here in control. This is the first like really interesting thing to me. It's when the arm ends up getting twisted, and then Shinji gets in this situation where they have to calm him down, and they're like, dude, that's not you, like that's, and he's sitting there like trying to almost pull the thing off and like stop it from what it's doing, which is really interesting. So does he take direct damage when the things are actually done? Are they synchronized in a certain way that the pilot of it actually ends up being harmed due to whatever damage is actually done to it? I believe not necessarily. We can still play a route where that's the case. I'm saying not really, because we even see later with the head and everything, that's not what happens to him. So like I don't know, maybe it's like certain parts or things, but it almost just feels like he's so synchronized and connected in a way that he can personally like feel the things, because it doesn't actually happen, right? But he didn't really have a reaction to it. But I guess that could also just be like the panic that's kind of going through his head, like a huge like headache and thing that happened, I don't know, and like the direct eye contact and stuff that we ended up seeing that we had later. But it makes me curious as to, is the feelings, almost, because we did talk about the synchronization between the two of them. We did showcase last time with it being kind of protective of him, but it almost looked as though it was mimicking the exact same kind of thing that Shinji himself was doing. Is it like each of them kind of compatible with each other to a point that they can each connect and represent each other? Like, so if one of them takes harm, or does the other, if they're in like that sort of area of each other here, we're able to have like that sort of connection. I don't know. And it leaves me very much wondering. Basically, he gets his ass fucking kicked this entire time, and then they just hit us with a random cut to this room, which is incredible. I love the moment of just sitting up and then just laying back down and being like, huh, like, what the fuck just happened? Which I think is always great. And then the unfamiliar ceilings end up beginning here. And then this is when it's like, oh shit, things went really bad. You end up seeing them pulling like different parts and things like throughout this, right? And it leaves you wondering what actually happens. The UN here is like really creepy. Like these dudes with their noses being all like huge and pointed down and everything. Like they just scream villain if you've ever seen one, you know? Like it just... it makes sense, but clearly they have some other plans and some other things that it is that they're going out of their way and trying to do, which is this. And they're basically saying that we have to be keeping Shinji's dad, like, he needs to be also prioritizing this, I'm believing. So they're like two different things on top of what he's trying to do, which I don't know what this is because they don't necessarily go into it too much, of the human instrumentality project, which is it doesn't say anything. So I don't know. This is just a notice of the meeting and stuff that they're kind of at and what their plans and their outline is. But I don't know. I guess it could be the same thing. It could be useful in the situation that we've talked about where Rei and now Shinji and then the third child that they also talked about are the only ones and the ones that are actually being used here, and that they're okay with them being used for being pilots of this. I guess that could also be like similarly and like loosely connected to us actually doing this and actually having these people who are like almost from birth being used as like operators of these things. I don't know. But it seems like that's the case because they're using them. Like, what exactly is the purpose and use for the humans that they're trying to use here in these moments? I don't exactly know. I love how they're just like so concerned about budget and all these other things. Like, the entire world isn't just getting completely fucked up. And they're all going to be dead if they don't do something about it, but instead they're concerned about that, which I think is great. And I just love the lighting that we use like throughout the entirety of this, just keeping everything like kind of gray or white and just, I don't know. I think it's great. Him having to see Rei kind of flash by him here, and he has to end up watching that. It's just like constantly laying traps, and we see a lot more later of like the results and the things that can happen to the people around you for you not acting out or not being better at what you actually are doing here. We end up figuring out that his memory's a little bit messed up, and then what was the exact wording that they used? Mental contamination. So whatever mental contamination could be, I have no idea what they're hinting towards here, but I could argue that he has a lot of stuff going on that's causing his mind to be completely messed up and not knowing exactly where he's at or like what's actually happening and everything. But I believe all of this kind of mixed in with his memory being all like messed up and everything is because he probably doesn't retain the full memories, I'd assume, of the actual situation that actually happened, because he was unconscious basically in that moment, or at least that's what we're almost believing is to be the case. But actually, no, they thinking about it, because then the next scene he immediately looks down at his arm as if like something happened to it, because that's the last thing that he almost memorizes. So it could also just be a talking about this situation that happened with his arm and him believing things are happening when they're actually not and stuff. But in reality, they also might be happening, and none of these people actually know because they haven't actually been involved in using any of these. So we don't know for certain, right? Misato ends up showing up, and then at this moment we go together. We basically have to show him his room, and he has to do all this because now we're taking them under. We're keeping him on close watch. He has to live with us, and we have to go through and do all this stuff. Which is really fucked up as well. Of course, putting a child in the situation into it. He hasn't flat out like straight refused anymore since the situation, but it's kind of hard at this point for him to, because of all the other stuff going on around him, especially the stuff that we set up and talked about last week. We come face to face with his dad here as we go to do it. And I love the way that they display this, because they do the exact same thing as we end up seeing later when he's basically walking into Misato's home, which is now going to be his home basically. And we use doorways here as like ways to kind of divide us and showcase like this divide that we're having of us entering a uncomfortable and an unfamiliar space almost. We are standing here, he's struggling, he's unable to take that step, he's kind of tense, like, and he's stiffed up a little bit when he sees his dad. He doesn't want to have to take that step forward and enter in and actually interact or be with him or any sort of way, and he doesn't want to enter and invade into somebody else's space due to probably a variety of reasons, being so uncomfortable also because you don't want to enter what that is, that unknown, that thing that you're so uncertain about or you're unfamiliar with, I guess, either. And we end up seeing all that kind of close, and there's absolutely nothing that he can do in those moments. We end up deciding that Misato will take care of him, because that's basically what she ends up choosing to do. I love her like carefree, like, oh, we're gonna make sure we have like a party, we're gonna get a whole bunch of stuff for you because we're roommates now and it's fun, and she's like so excited about it. But him, of course, it's like, how the fuck can I think straight? Look at all the shit that just ended up happening. In these moments we see people walking by him, right? People within the store that they stop at talking and saying like, hey, like all that shit that went down yesterday, oh, that was rough, like, and like talking about the events of the things that ended up happening. And even if they are like, oh, that was awful, or oh, that I'm thankful that like I'm even alive and like we're good and all that, these are things that can kind of go to the mind for him, and it can mess with him like a lot. It can make him think these are people, I know their faces now, I've seen them, like I've almost, I mean, he didn't interact directly with them at all, but it's like knowing that there's people like this out here that I'm solely responsible for. Almost, I'm the only one who can do things in these situations, and I have to go out of my way and do them. So knowing that that's the case is really concerning, right? It can be, thinking that there are plenty of people like this that you let down, and you can possibly be the reason that they lose their lives at the end of the day, and you could be that cause for it. Is things that are constantly just being piped around him here, and he has to hear and listen to, and it messes with you. It definitely does, and it creates these unreal expectations almost of like what you have to live up to and you have to accomplish, and you can't let yourself down, and it takes a really strong mental toll for you to have to end up going through that. We end up displaying, basically, I'm assuming, what the city that we were able to see the time before that, and it's because we keep it underground, basically. So Masato shows us a really cool view of us being able to see all that come into play, and us actually having like this living city that we're able to be a part of here. But at the same time, whenever we are invaded or anything else kind of goes down, we're able to use our technology and kind of hide off these things, which is pretty great. I also think it's like great how she made like the AC comment earlier in the episode about it being like the greatest invention ever, when it's like you have these fucking giant things that can walk around, and you can do things like this with cities and everything, and you're talking about air conditioning, which I think is awesome. She's living like a crazy life here too, of everything being a mess. This is what we're saying again. We had another moment. He stands beforehand. Can you take that step forward? Can you invade that space? Can you cross that barrier and enter the unknown almost, right? Can you get into that? And it's a big deal to be able to take that step. It's a lot easier now, because instead of just coming face to face and not having anything to be reassuring of, you end up having Misato here standing by your side in this moment again, being that person where she didn't say anything before and let you just kind of have that interaction that you ended up having. She looks at you and she's like, this is okay. This is your home. This is like, you're allowed to be here. You can do this. And it allows him to be encouraged almost, and feels comfortable enough to take that next step, which of course puts a big old smile on her face. Her home, complete mess, of course, in this moment when she talks about this too, of us having another roommate and everything, I think is great. And being like, oh, he's still sleeping, or he's in the fridge or whatever. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Which we end up getting to see later is great. I love when she drinks this right here, and her voice actress does a great job at really selling it, and really bringing a lot of energy and personality to her character, and really bringing her alive. And I think that she's like so excited. We continue doing a lot of different shots and angles and things like this of her, where we almost sexualize her like a lot. And I've talked about it last episode and also within the discussion here of the idea that sometimes we can play with a character and almost put them in these situations where like we make it okay in a way to do it. And I say okay as the perspective, I guess, of like Shinji, almost like he's going to do it and he's observing and witnessing and seeing all these things, so the viewer kind of should as well, and should have to like see through the lens almost of him, of like the things that he's going to take note of as well, so we can kind of do it, but also selling herself off as like a character that's like that, as we see with the initial image and everything that she sends him to like come before she comes find him and everything, and the way that we frame a lot of that stuff, it makes it almost like they think it's, or they're trying to display that like it's okay when we do that with this character for these specific reasons, because she's as a person that's trying to like utilize and get to like the core of him and like really get into like his own mind and have a control almost over him, is the way that I read into it. But it also just entirely could be because we haven't introduced a lot of the other women within the show yet, so it could entirely just be something that they just constantly do, and it just could be a theme and have no like real meaning or anything to it. It's just something that like I like to read into, because sometimes there are series where there are like one specific character where they do this too, just to showcase maybe something about that character or about like the main character and the way that they kind of observe them and they see them too. But yeah, I mean, this stuff's really cute, just like having like the normal things. We get to have like fun moments. We play games and then create like a chore list and all this other stuff, right? Like it's like creating this welcoming like home environment for him to be in. She hits him with this line again that can be really manipulative of him over time at some other point, and then we have these moments where Pen ends up coming out. And I absolutely love that. Like, why the fuck do we just have a penguin that knows how to do everything? I don't know. And then her just kind of observing him in this moment while he's standing here, because he's so like completely mind blown over the penguin being here that he doesn't even realize he has nothing on, and he's just showing everything to her, right? And I also love her grabbing the beer and moving it, and then there's still being something there to kind of protect and block it. He talks about his concerns here in this moment too, right? He doesn't like being in the bath. He doesn't like being in a space that's silent. He doesn't like like not having anything kind of around him, right? He's always kind of been like this. So he always seems to stir up and bring up these old thoughts and these things that he doesn't want to, and all the trauma and everything that he has kind of comes back to him, and he ends up getting like really bothered by it, right? Of course, it's constantly replaying within his mind, and he doesn't want to. So having people around him like Masato and stuff is good because it can help be used as a distraction. But when you're in this and you just constantly hear these own echoes, and all that you're left with is just you and yourself, it's like, and you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to kind of mask like the fear of or anything like that. What's left? What are those thoughts that are going to kind of linger in your mind and you're going to see? And it's a bunch of things that he doesn't ultimately end up wanting to see. We talk about how these are the only people, the children themselves are the only ones who can pilot these, and we need Ray to basically come back to work at some sort of point here, and how it's fully okay that, you know, it's us using these people, even though that they are so young and stuff. And it's like really fucked up. Shinji in this moment, I like how he listens to stuff through his earbuds and everything that he has here, and he's trying to almost block out that sound, right? It's what I just said about the bathroom. You don't want to be in that silent space. In this, he can pipe noise within his own head, and he can kind of try and distract himself and allow himself to go to sleep. I mean, he has a book and everything next to him too, right? So he's putting himself almost in these situations where he doesn't have to be alone with his own thoughts and have to relive and see these things, but ultimately it ends up still coming because it is so strong that's what happens. And I love how now we flash back at this point and we display everything that we ended up missing before about what happens. At this moment, he takes over completely, or the Eva takes over completely, which I think is really fucking cool. It's almost like he's going completely berserk at this moment. Why is this happening? Is it just the unconscious state of Shinji, the thing that's reaching like the deepest things within him, the darkest things that kind of come out within him? He's reached like that dark place almost, and it's pulling all of that out, and it's like all that rage and anger and stuff that he's built up over the years that he's never openly displayed or anything, is all that stuff coming out and being used specifically in these moments. Is he that not the case? Is this thing just strictly like alive, and because he no longer has to have a pilot, but because it was already activated and moving and stuff, and it like fears for its own life, it has to kind of act in like self-defense and like really get going and pull all this anger and everything out? I don't know. There's lots of, I guess, different directions and stuff that we can kind of take. The fighting and everything's pretty fucking cool for it, and I just love it's like it's moving very fluid and everything in comparison to how it was when Shinji himself was controlling it. I wonder if we're going to overcome this at some point, where we're going to grow him to a point that he can actually operate at something like this when he's actually conscious of the state that he's in, or if it's more of like this is always going to kind of have to happen back against the wall type of thing. But also it could just be like a Shinji's life is in danger here if this thing's actually operating out of like protection for him like it was beforehand. Is there also something else that's kind of going on there where it realizes that he's in danger and it kind of acts out as a result? I don't know, but it basically starts ripping parts off of it, like beating the angel with its own like bones and everything. It's kind of crazy how all of that works. The dad looks on and just completely happy about it. In this moment, Shinji kind of comes back to consciousness here and understands what's going on. He ends up seeing the head as it falls off, and he has to gaze on as the eye almost comes out of it. It's like, what is this coming from? So these things are not entirely mechanical in any sort of way. They're not just made like that. Are they part like of being whatever the angels actually are, right? Is it part of that? Is it like some other sort of creature in some sort of way that gets kind of masked as this, so they can operate on their own, but for whatever reason, and when they synchronize and do these things with him, it's entirely different? I don't know. It leaves a lot of questions, but we do this and then flash back to his own eye, and he has to make contact with this thing, this monster essentially, and it causes straight panic through him, and you hear that like loud scream that came from him in that moment. But of course, when he's here in this moment, he doesn't end up showing any sort of emotion, of course, because also he's not completely alone in this moment. He knows somebody else is within this house, and he probably has to kind of keep all that in. She comes in, she reassures him, hey, you did a good thing, good job today. Of course, it's right. It's these things that we're going to keep piping into you. We're going to keep telling you, hey, you're doing good, buddy. Like, just keep it up. You know, keep doing those things that you're doing. The world's going to be great because of you, right? And it's like, well, I'm not great right now, and I don't know if I could trust that or if I should. And I don't know. That's why it just like it makes me feel so weird about like where they're gonna head with her character. And like she also, like I said, she could just be being nice. She might not mean that in the slightest, like in a different sort of way, right? It's just, I feel like you have to look at it both ways just to be cautious of like, she possibly could just be like, all right, you're doing good, like trying to make sure that he's okay, trying to make sure that he understands the things that he's doing are actually okay. But it also could be manipulative in a way of like them just trying to use like another piece in their game for whatever they're ultimately trying to set up at the end of the day. I don't know, and it leaves me kind of concerned. It's all from me, all my yapping. Another great one, and I'm very excited to see the direction that we end up heading. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, all like and subscribe. If not to me, feel free to check out the other videos on the channel. Leave me the comments for this better series. I'll be back for episode 3 soon. You guys have a good one. Peace.